Hi, this is Tatiana, and as I say in the beginning of all my videos, I want to let you know, if you haven't watched any of the other ones yet, that I'm not a doctor, and I am doing these videos as part of my own coping strategy, as well as my hope is that those of you who are feeling like maybe you are in a narcissistic or abusive relationship are going to hear these stories and examples that I give and validate your gut feeling. Because I have been in abusive relationships without having someone to talk to. So if you have come to my video and you are wondering if you are with an abuser or a narcissist, take a listen to these stories and see if it is something that you're feeling validated about. This video is about games that narcissists play, and this is going to be, I'm grabbing my notes here, one of the games that narcissists play is isolating the victim. The purpose of isolating the victim is to keep you from validating your gut feelings, okay? And isolating the victim usually happens early in the relationship, so that, you know, as they have targeted you and are locking you in as their narcissistic supply, you know, it takes a lot of effort to do that to a person. So at a certain point, they're going to get exhausted. And that's usually why the relationship moves very quickly. And during that period, that person, whether male or female, needs to isolate that victim so that by the time that their behavior, I'm not even sure that they're conscious about it, I'm not sure, but by the time that they do fall apart, and start revealing who they really are, you need to be isolated from a support system. The victim needs to be completely dependent on them for their concept of reality, concept of what's okay, concept of what's acceptable in a relationship, and or, you know, what the definitions are for a good relationship. That abuser has defined what a good relationship is, and you need to stick in that mold. And communicating with other people is going to destroy that paradigm, right? Somebody else is going to go, I'm sorry, what? He did what? Or your guy friends are going to be like, she's doing what? Dude, you need to drop that. So before you get to that point of awareness, they have to have isolated you. So in my experience, and I've done, there is a playlist on my, if you click and go to Truth Ball in Search of Goof, you'll see my playlists, and I do have a playlist called Personal Experiences, and that is the 3 big relationships that I went through with abusers. So, so quickly, how did they isolate me? The first relationship was when I was much younger, and isolating me, I think for all 3 relationships, it was probably, for two of them, it was easy to isolate me because I had recently moved. So I already did not have, you know, girlfriends that I could be talking to, as well as, you know, I've already chosen to separate myself from my family because of some of the dysfunction that's there. So I have a very tentative relationship with my family already. I'm primed, all right? I'm primed for an abusive relationship. However, let me come back to the exact example, especially with my first relationship, because that is when I was much younger. We met when I was 18, and I was completely unaware of the pattern of an abusive relationship. So I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. So when I had gotten into that relationship, I was recently divorced from a good friend of mine, actually. We are still very good friends. My first husband and I had been together since I was 16, and we had gotten married 15. 15 or 16, and we had been boyfriend and girlfriend and gotten married, right as soon as I turned 18. Anyway, and it was a healthy relationship, so we are still friends. We just weren't a good match as husband and wife. So we had divorced, and I very quickly got into this relationship with the overt narcissist. So I already was in an area that I didn't have friends, and so we had started the relationship, moved quickly, and so the only person that he had to isolate me from was my ex-husband. Now, that's pretty easy to do, as a new boyfriend is going to say, well, I'm sorry, this is your ex-husband, I really don't want you guys talking on the phone. And he would stand there, when we would try to talk on the phone. And for my ex-husband, he didn't have any friends in the area either, or just a couple, and we were friends, real friends. So I remember clearly it was painful having to discontinue communicating with him, but he made it so uncomfortable, and of course, and he did have a legitimate, or in a healthy relationship, it would be a legitimate concern, right? Talking with your ex-husband like they are a close friend, it's normal. It's normal for that to be difficult for a new partner to accept. However, of course, years later, as I learned about narcissism, he would have done that with anyone that I was talking on the phone with. And he did do that with anyone that I talked with, because I only talked to my ex-husband and some of my family members. And he would do the same thing when I was on the phone, and this is way before cell phones. So, I'm standing in the kitchen, and he would stay in the living room area, kind of kitchen area, living room area connected, and just in general hover and make me uncomfortable. He didn't know my ex-husband, so he didn't have anything negative to say about him, but with my family, because I already had kind of a constrained relationship, he just glommed onto that and would promote that dysfunction. You're, and I remember him saying, like, your family doesn't like me. And, I had to, at a certain point, the drama built up to such a point that I had to choose between my family and him. And of course, by that time, I was hook, line, and sinker, and I did choose him. And in fact, I think maybe after we had been together for about 2 years, one of my sisters was getting married, and so we had driven to California to go to the wedding. And this is something that was, I really don't think about this very much, but very unique and part of that isolation process. So we did, both of us, go out there, and of course all of my family is there, who I really haven't communicated with in a couple of years, and there is dysfunction there. My dad is there, my mother is there, there's a lot of problems. My stepfather, if you watch some other videos that I've posted, you'll see that it was just extremely uncomfortable. However, this is my family, and it's a wedding, and you pull your shit together. So we were at a, how do I say this? We were down in, what's the name of that town? Coronado, down in California, and so we're actually staying on a yacht, and it is in the harbor. So we went to sleep that night. I can't remember what happened that evening. I think we got there late enough that we went right to sleep. The next morning, I'm not even awake yet, and my boyfriend at the time had climbed out a window, did not want to meet the family, and instead of going up the deck and through the living space and then off the boat in order to leave, he literally climbed out a window onto the deck and drove away. without, it was unreal. It was just unreal. I could not understand why a grown man would climb out a window, and yet, I was already so suckered into that relationship. I just was like, I got to get through this wedding and get back to him. Okay, so that, by then, I'm already emotionally isolated, but now I was physically abandoned, and needed to leave my family in order to work out whatever the problem was. So you see how he, basically it's like, I'm going to abandon you and dump you unless you leave this family gathering in order to spend, time with me, and, fix whatever thing he has going on in his head that my family doesn't like him. I don't know, my family might not have liked him. Who knows? We're quite, codependent or abusive, so who knows? All the codependents in my family might have really liked him. He was a gregarious guy. So, I don't know. The point is that he had to set up that situation to make me feel abandoned unless I abandoned my family, and I did. I did get through the wedding, but left immediately after to go back to him. And my family was no, especially at the time, my family was no motivation for me to stay there. My dad said horrible things to me while I was there for the wedding. It was beyond uncomfortable. Anyway, so do you see how there's subtle things. So identifying that you are in an abusive relationship and have been isolated is a difficult thing to work out, because the specifics of how that abuser is isolated you, it seems natural, and then after you work through and recognize that they are a narcissist, it becomes clear that they did certain things on purpose. And it's really difficult when you are at that place and you're ready to look at it and say, that's evil. That was really evil and a lot of effort to hurt me. And it's a painful one to recognize. So I just want to validate you there if that is what you're going through. So as far as my list goes, my notes here: being derogatory and destructive to other healthy people that you have been or are trying to be in a relationship with. My first abusive relationship was very good at that, and I did try to make girlfriends while we were together for about 4 years. I tried several times to make girlfriends, and he would call or interrupt or require that I be somewhere during the time that I should be able to have time to spend with those friends, etc. Whatever little thing he could do. In the second relationship that I was in, we both attended church, and so it was very difficult. You're thinking, wow, well, if you're going to church, how can you isolate a person? This is how he isolated me, and this is after we were together for 12 years. So realizing this was way after the end of the marriage, and a lot of therapy and post-traumatic stress disorder, medication. This type of isolating really rocked my world. It rocked my world, and it changed me. It changed my complete view of God and church. Okay, so this is how he isolated me, because I didn't think I was isolated. I didn't know that I was isolated, even though I was surrounded by friends and people at church. So what he had done, and I break it into two parts. There's before I knew what was going on, and then after. So before, for the 6 years prior to our marriage, I should say for the first year that we were together, he was actually dating me and another woman, and had expressed to me that he did not like public displays of affection. So even though we were at church together all the time, there was never any kind of physical touching. So I guess it would look like I was just a little puppy dog wanting to hang around him all the time. Because what was really going on was that he was dating this other woman in front of everyone, in front of all the friends, all the people I went to, my closest friends, our group of friends. He was at the beach with her, holding her hand. He was kissing her as everybody was saying goodnight. And for me, he would say, we would date during the week, and then during the weekend, he was, going to go see his friend. Sometimes I knew that she was in town, and sometimes I didn't, but it would be like, that's my friend Jennifer. And it wasn't until after we were married, 6 years later, that I found out that first year he had been with her publicly. One of the ways I found that out was because his brother would never look me in the eye. For 6 years before we were married, every time I would see the brother, and I saw him all the time, for 6 years his brother would never look me in the eye, and I just thought, man, he is just the shyest dude in the world, right? You see how I'm just oblivious. I'm oblivious to the fact that I'm isolated. I thought the brother was shy, when in fact, after I found out what happened 6 years later, I confronted the brother and asked him how he could have been helping, my husband to have this relationship behind my back. And how can you tell yourself you're a good person helping him hide a relationship from me? And then he burst into tears and said to me that he didn't know, and I've never seen a man this devastated. He was bawling his eyes out, bent over, crying, in shock himself, because he said, and he's like crying out. I don't know how to convey this, but he was crying and saying, I asked him. He had asked his brother many, 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 multiple times if he was dating me. He had asked him because I'm there. I'm there all the time. When he comes down to visit, I'm there in the living room sitting on the couch, and the brother has taken him to go meet who he thinks is the girlfriend. So that's why he never looked me in the eye. He thought that I was just some loser who is like, well, maybe I'll get some crumbs out of this guy. I know that he's dating somebody else, but she lives in another town, so let me just go ahead and I'm just going to always be there. I'm just going to be this, I don't even know. That is such a pathetic concept of a woman, that I would be at the house of someone who is full blown in another relationship, and I just can't leave and move on. When I found that out 6 years into the relationship, after we are married, when I found that out, I went and confronted all of our friends. Now, the reason that this worked is because they were his friends before I went to the church. So these people are already his friends. So whatever he has communicated to them about his relationship with this other woman is how they perceive him. And then I'm there, but I'm never having any physical contact with them, with him. So they don't know that we're in a committed relationship. Maybe they think we're dating. I don't know. So basically, after 6 years, I find out that from the brother and confront all of our friends and realize, because I'm pretty sure after about 1.5 years, she dumped him, I think is what happened. And that's when he became more public about his relationship with me, I think. So I went back and confronted all my friends and realized that they all had not known that we were together for that 1.5 years. And it made me, it kind of took a veil off and made me look at my own friends and realize who they thought I was. And I'm not that pathetic woman. I'm not. I was not consciously chasing a man who's in a relationship with somebody else. he had conveyed to me that he wanted to be married in that, I don't know, the first couple of weeks. So I completely had a different concept. So, but you see how I was isolated. I didn't know how my social circle perceived me. He had that. He had the parameters of how they should look at me, and so they never really connected with who I am, who Tatiana is. So instead of isolating me, keeping me away from them, he had developed a perception that they have, which isolated my social circle from connecting to me, who I really was. So that is not really easy to explain, but I can tell you that it took me years, and some heavy duty medication for a year or two. The devastation that did to me. And then once we were married, like I said, this isn't until I got divorced that I started to figure all of this stuff out. So 12 years. So 6 years, that's how he first isolated me. Once we were married, he isolated me the same thing. He portrayed to everybody else who I was so that nobody would connect with me. So after I found this out, I was devastated, I was angry, and we went to therapy, many, I don't know, 6 or 7 marriage counselors, and he would never acknowledge that he cheated on me. He never acknowledged that he cheated on me to my face. He never acknowledged that he cheated on me with the counselors. In fact, it never came up. Not until the 7th one where I was like, fuck this, I'm fucking out. And I never had an answer for anything. It wasn't until after I got out of the marriage that I started to, I don't know, have real people connect with me. So I was able to start breaking out of that. And then, it wasn't until a couple years after the marriage that I realized, before we went to each marriage counselor, he would talk to the marriage counselor, portray to the marriage counselor that he is in an abusive relationship because I absolutely was yelling my fucking swearing head off to him all the time. All the time. I was a truly, deeply hurting, enraged person. So he would go to the counselor and say that the problem that we have in our marriage is that I am an angry, abusive, verbally abusive person. Whereas in actuality, I had a husband who cheated on me and would not acknowledge it ever. And so we never, the first time we went to a marriage counselor, I said that, and it's really funny, you know, when I go back on that, because I didn't know that he was prepping the counselors we would meet. I didn't know he had prepped them ahead of time. So we're sitting in the second, our first marriage counselor, our second session, and I'm trying to get him to talk about the fact that he cheated on me. And he wouldn't do it, and the counselors weren't helping me talk about this, because really, that's my only problem. It's my only problem. I don't actually have other problems. I'm not consciously aware yet of other problems in the marriage. All I'm aware of is that he cheated on me, and we need to work this out. So in our second session, I'm saying, at some point I finally exploded, because we're talking about shit that it's not important to me. This isn't a problem. Those things are not a problem. And I burst out, you know, you fucking cheated on me. And I'm crying and I'm yelling. And when I'm done, both of the counselors look at me like they're shocked at me. And then they look at him with pity and go, is this what you've been putting up with? And it blew my mind. It blew my mind in the world to say, you cheated on me. You know, because inside my heart, even though on the outside I am raging, inside my heart I'm hurting. I am hurting until I'm exploding. So inside I feel like what I've said is, you cheated on me and I'm just devastated. That's what I felt like. But on the outside it was rage. He had prepared them to see rage, and that's all they saw was rage. They didn't even ever, and we went to them for, I don't know, months and months. They never came back and acknowledged me. Instead, they sent me to anger management classes. It was pathetic. It was pathetic. And for 6 years, no one ever looked past my anger to say, you cheated, and you need to acknowledge that. This is your wife, and you need to honor her and respect her and love her, and make her feel like that'll never happen again. But in fact, throughout the course of the whole 12 years, he would triangulate, look through my videos and find the games narcissists play, triangulation. Even though he wasn't cheating anymore, he would definitely bring in other women to continue, because it worked. It worked. It devastated me and fed his supply. So so what I'm saying is, again, throughout that entire relationship, his manner of isolating me was not getting me to isolate. It was giving everybody else a perception of who I am, so that nobody supported me. Nobody ever looked past the anger that I was expressing to see that I was in pain and needed help. I needed help. When I left, I needed help. I was suicidal. The only reason I left is because I was suicidal, completely obsessed with the desire to kill myself. He had isolated me so much. Friends, church, family, and my concept of God. By that time, my concept of being a Christian, that was, since he wasn't cheating, now that we're married, if I divorced him, God would be displeased with me and, I don't know, sentenced to hell. So I am isolated from God at this point if I don't get happy with the fact that he has cheated on me. So it was terrible. Every single paradigm I had in my head of what the world was like and what people were like was gone. So I'm isolated. I was isolated at every level, every single level that you can conceive of. So that's another way that you can be isolated, is by a smear campaign. And it was intentional over a very, very long period of time. A very long period of time. However, as I said in the first example, it started right from the beginning. When we had dated, let's say we dated on a Friday night. From our first date on Friday night, Saturday was his first date that he had with this other woman. So fast, but it was a fast relationship with me, and I assume a fast relationship with her, but it was fast, and he immediately began that game. That game began 24 hours into the relationship that he was having with both of us. Okay? All right, and then the last example, isolating the victim. Again, like I said, two of my examples, I had just moved to a new place, so I was already isolated. And this was much, much later in life, much shorter experience, because I was much more consciously aware of abusive behavior. That is the overt narcissist video that I have posted under personal experiences. So I was isolated because I was in a new area, and as I've said before, I have already chosen to separate myself from a lot of contact with my family. Because of the dysfunction, however, in this relationship I can give you an example of how he did try to isolate me further from my family. In actuality, that last relationship, I had been introduced to him by my youngest sister. So my youngest sister didn't know him. She was actually a fan of his work, and but her husband, who works in the industry that he's in, does know him professionally. So I have a professional relationship, a fan, and then we were introduced, and I had intended to make a professional relationship with him, but we ended up developing a friendship and then moving into a relationship. So even though he isn't friends with my sister, there was an argument that had occurred during the relationship with the abuser. my sister and I had had an argument, a disagreement, and we had discontinued communicating for a couple of months. And what I had decided to do to repair the relationship with my sister was just on each holiday, whatever the occasion was to send her a polite message, just wishing her a good day, kind of a thing. And so we had had our argument sometime around August, and I had started, so August, September, maybe by October, like maybe there would have been like a, happy Halloween kind of a thing. Hope you and, your daughter have a really great time, something like that. Not expecting a reply. Anyway, so October, August, September, October, November. Sorry for trying to do my math in my head, because I guess it's irrelevant. But the point of the matter is that, yes, I think almost a year had gone by. No, I wasn't in the relationship that long. Anyway, I'm sorry. That timeline is important to me because after we had broken up, we were still living together. I had sent her, I think it was like Christmas or New Year's, she had finally responded to one of my messages, and it was very curt, pissed off, and it made no sense to me at all. So whatever she had said was something like, as if my ex-boyfriend, who she didn't know I had broken up with, as if he had been the one telling me that I should send her messages. She was saying that, I, out of my own loving heart, I was not communicating and sending these messages, that I was, basically, this dude was the one making me send the messages. So anyway, her message made no sense to me whatsoever. And so, and like I said, we're living together even though we're broken up. And I'm in the shower, and I'm like just trying to pray about it. Like, I really don't know what's going on, and the relationship with my sister is so tentative yet so important to me. I don't know how to fix it or how to respond. And all of a sudden, I thought, that fucking asshole did something to fuck with my relationship with her, and I have been trying to fix this relationship for, I'm thinking about 6 months. 6 months I've been trying to fix this relationship. Why hasn't it been working? So when I get out of the shower, I'm, talking with him in the living room. And at this point, you can hear that in the overt narcissist video. I'm basically kissing his ass. I'm surviving this narcissist. So I try to figure out how to communicate with him without accusing him. So I sit down, I'm like, I got this really weird message from my sister, and have you seen her? Have you talked to her? What about her husband? Have you run into him at any of these functions that you go to? And booyah, 2 months earlier, which he has not told me, he did not tell me until this moment that I asked him, have you communicated with my sister or brother-in-law? And now he tells me 2 months later that he did run into him, and they had had a conversation. And I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm realizing 2 months earlier, at least 2 months earlier, he had conveyed to my brother-in-law that he was the one who was trying to fix the relationship between me and my sister, when really what he was doing, if that makes sense to you, because narcissists are assholes, and this was very subtle. He wanted my brother-in-law to walk away and do exactly what he did. Go to my sister and say, yeah, Tatiana isn't really trying to fix it, but he keeps trying to fix, your sister. He keeps trying to talk to her and trying to talk to her and trying to talk to her, but she's such a bitch, I guess. And she, so the only reason she's sending you messages is because he has told her to. And there I am 2 months later, oblivious that he has been, that he set that up to sabotage my efforts to restore the relationship with my own baby sister. So that, I wasn't surprised, but You know, it was very hurtful. And so anyway, so there's, and good golly, you know, I mean, that was the only person in my life that he could have any effect on. And there he is trying to isolate me from, you know, not that she's a support system, but he knows that I love her. Even though we argued, love her. I love her. And that is not okay for a narcissist. For me to have a relationship with someone that I do unconditionally love. You know, I'm not even getting anything from her. I don't need her to hate him. You know, they just don't want you to have healthy relationships. It disturbs their control over you. And boy, that motherfucker really liked control. Okay, anyway, you'll see where okay, so isolating the victim, you know, that's, I can tell you that when I got out of that 12-year relationship and had to reestablish a relationship with my God, you can see why I'm perfectly, you know, not perfectly, I know I'm not supposed to swear, but, you know, seriously, you know, me swearing and cussing and stuff, I know that God loves me, and I really had to work to get back that healthy relationship, you know, that spiritual relationship for me. You know, it's okay if you're not religious, that's perfectly fine. I'm just saying, for me, that is the most important relationship in my life, and a narcissist was able to break that relationship. And I think to some extent, you know, I believe that to some extent even my tendency to use swear words is like a defense mechanism, in fact, where I say, I can fucking swear and I know my God still loves me. Because of that narcissistic relationship that I was in, I was so isolated from God because I had to be a good person, and no matter what I was doing, I was never achieving that good enough person in order to have a relationship with God. So if that makes sense to you, the way that my mind has tried to cope with that is to say every day, you know, in some way, I know I'm not a good person and God still loves me, and that makes me feel safe, that no one is going to be able to steal, and none of my mistakes are going to be able to steal that relationship from me. So even though I'm giving you a religious thing, a religious concept, I hope that isn't turning you off from my real point. And my point is that if you feel isolated from your friends, your family, people who care about you, being able to just have the freedom to connect with coworkers, or you're not allowed to talk. I've even heard a story about the person who used to live in my home. Someone who lived a few tenants back. The couple that used to live here, the husband would not let the wife sit on the porch because he didn't want anyone to see her. Okay, that's isolating the victim. He did not want anyone to even see her. Strangers walking on the street. I say hello and good morning to people walking on the street. There is nothing wrong with that. All of those are ways that the abuser isolates the victim so that you have no support system whatsoever. So even if you are isolated and you're feeling more and more validated that you are in an abusive relationship, your abuser has isolated you, you need to develop supportive relationships again. And I would do that if you do not know how you're going to get out of this relationship yet. I advocate for you to develop relationships and keep that completely secret from your abuser. Start developing and connecting with people. And the first place that I'm going to send you to do that is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I want you to give them a call. It's anonymous. They won't call you, but you can talk to someone 24 hours a day and start validating the gut feelings that you are having that you are in an abusive relationship, and they can help you and set you up with resources and connect you with counselors, etc. The National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. Give them a call and start developing connections again with people, healthy people, okay? And you will get free of this relationship, okay? I'm sending you much love.